And in America, where law-abiding citizens have guns, crime is down, like in Texas.
But I've got a lot of Americans in this audience who are all shaking their heads at what you're saying. So
let's have hearings in Chicago. Chicago has very strict gun control and was the murder capital of the U.S. last year. Over 500 people were killed. Now, why is it the people who are for gun control don't want to go to Chicago to find out why gun control has failed so miserably?
Why are automatic weapons banned in America?
In the year where they discussed banning them, there was a 10-year supply of these sold in 1 year because people wanted them for self-protection before they were banned, and the ban disappeared, it sunsetted 10 years later. All the ban did was put the guns on the street 10 years earlier. And what was the effect? No increase in crime using those particular kinds of firearms at all. Unlike Britain and the UK, where firearms are banned, this past year, you've had a 35% increase in gun crime. Gun crime has gone up every year for the last 4 years.
Oh,
gun
do
crime
me a
is double
favour,
what it was
honestly.
before they banned guns in the UK.
Do me a favour. Do you know how many people got murdered with guns in Britain on average in the last 3 or 4 years? Have you any idea?
Yeah.
I know why sales of these weapons have been soaring in the last few days. It's down to idiots like you. Mr. Pratt, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for your high-level argument, Mr. Morgan.
You know what?
Really
you wouldn't
very good.
understand the meaning of the phrase high-level argument. Let me give you a fact. Wait a minute.
Wait
a minute, sir. Wait a minute.
Someone uses a firearm to
you want to talk
themselves and their family
facts?
from a
Let me
criminal
give you a
attack.
fact.
If you want to get
Can you
good
stop
public
talking?
opinion, if you want to get a good solution, you got to look at both sides of the
Can you
equation.
stop talking?
If you want to have a debate, you got to look at both sides.
Yeah, to debate, you got to let me speak. Let me speak. It's my show. Here's a fact for you. James Holmes in Aurora shot 70 people. He killed 12. What would you personally do and authorise politicians to do to reduce gun violence?
To reduce gun violence, like I said, first and foremost, I would stop regulations that seek to disarm law-abiding citizens. I would also, in addition to that, that's actually one of the most important things you can do, because concealed carry, first off, whenever concealed carry is implemented, like for instance Florida or
okay,
in
but
my
Dana,
state of Missouri, the crime rate goes down.
keeping guns,
that's a huge thing,
Dana,
Piers. Why you
Dana,
need to know
other than
that.
other than keeping guns in people's hands, I've got your point on that. What would you proactively do to reduce gun violence?
Tougher penalties for criminals who kill people with illegally obtained firearms.
Okay, Charles Blow, please stop laughing.
Because
Please
you're saying, what is your argument, and then you won't let me make an argument.
I'm going to ask you the question, but if you could stop
You've
laughing.
You've already posited the
if
question.
You could stop.
Let me answer your question.
I haven't asked you the question.
Repeat
My
it.
question is this. If you could stop laughing for a moment. Chicago is completely outrageous that more guns is the answer to less gun murder.
Because the problem occurs, sir, in those areas precisely where we have said no guns. The problem doesn't occur where the guns are allowed freely to be carried, to be used by people. There we have very low murder rates. We have lower murder rates in other parts of the country than even in Europe, than even where you come from. But what has created the problem in the United States is to say in cities and schools, those are areas where we're not going to allow people to defend themselves.
What is the murder rate in Great Britain for the last 3 years? Do you know, from guns?
It's under 3 per 100,000, and in Fairfax County, where Gun Owners of America is located, it is actually 0.3 per 100,000, about a tenth of what it is in your vaunted English bucolic countryside. The fact of the matter is, with guns comes safety if the guns are in the hands of the good guys. And when you say the good guys can't have guns, the bad guys have a monopoly, and horrible things such as the shooting at the schools take place.
The AR-15, as we've now seen from the last 3 mass shootings in America, Aurora, the shopping mall in Oregon, and now at Sandy Hook School, is the preferred choice of weapon for disturbed young men.
The shopping mall had a sign at every single door going into it that said, "No firearms allowed." The theater in Aurora had a sign, "No firearms allowed." These become killing zones for criminals. They can go in, it's a victim disarmament zone. That's not a way to do it. If you look at almost all these mass shootings, where do they happen? In gun-free school zones, on college campuses where you can't have a gun, in malls where you can't have a gun, in movie theaters where you can't have a gun. Doesn't that give you an alarm bell?
I'll tell you what makes alarm bells to me is that until 2004, following the ban on these assault weapons, then there was a ban.
Virginia Tech, that was the single deadliest shooting in the history of this country, and that was done with handguns.
Pierce, if your primary concern is saving lives,
Yes.
you'd have to look at pistols, because pistols are the primary killers, and they're the primary killers in big cities, all of which have gun control
But they are
laws.
not, as you know, and
none
they
of
are
which
not,
work.
as you know, the primary preferred weapon of mass shooters, deranged young men.
Compared to your violent crime rate overall.
Mr. Pratt.
The rapes, the muggings, the beatings.
Mr. Pratt, stop being sensational.
Your murder rate is lower than ours. That is true.
Lower?
Your
It's
violent
35 against 12,000.
Your violent
In
crime
Australia,
rate,
they had a
your
massacre,
violent
and they
crime
got
rate
rid
is
of these
higher
assault
than
weapons.
ours, as is the violent crime rate in Australia. America is not the Wild West that you are depicting. We only have the problem in our cities and unhappily in our schools, where people like you have been able to get laws put on the books that keep people from being able to defend themselves. I honestly don't understand why you would rather have people be victims of a crime than be able to defend themselves. It's incomprehensible.
You're an unbelievably stupid man, aren't you?
It seems to me that you're morally obtuse. You seem to prefer being a victim to being able to prevail over the criminal element. And I don't know why you want to be the criminal's friend.
What a ridiculous argument. You have absolutely no coherent argument whatsoever. You don't give a damn, do you, about the gun murder rate in America? You don't actually care. All you care about
It seems to me that
is the
facts
right
don't bother you, do they, Mr. Morgan?
You would like to see...
Facts don't seem to... They bounce right off of your head.
Let's deal with some facts.
You're speaking oblivious to what we do know, is that when you go to an area in the United States where guns are freely available, readily able to be carried legally, there you find our lowest murder rates, lower than the murder rates in Europe. You go to our cities where we have cracked down on guns, and people can't defend themselves, and that's where the criminals have a field day.
How many guns did Mrs. Lanza have in her home? It's not funny. Why are you laughing?
Because you're not telling the truth. That's why I'm laughing.
Why don't you stop laughing? It looks creepy, all right? Let me turn to you, Dan Gross.
Cheers.
Yeah, whatever. Do you know how many have been killed by guns since Sandy Hook?
Absolutely.
3,240, I think it is. Since Sandy Hook.
You're confusing two different things, though. You're lumping together the mass murderers, which are very, very rare, and
But mass shootings are escalating in a dramatic way since 2007.
Where are you on the pistols that killed most of the people in Chicago, Pierce?
My position...
It's okay if we kill them individually?
No,
You're saying,
let me make my
3,
position,
4, 5 a night's
my
okay?
position very, very clear. What is happening in Chicago is completely outrageous.
Where gun control hasn't worked.
Listen, Chicago,
but none of the gun control
has to sort itself out. Chicago's police force has to get in there and stop these gangs shooting each other. I totally agree with you. You're never going to hear that a word from me against that. It's outrageous. I also agree with an American's right to have a handgun or a pistol at home to defend themselves. I don't see why any of them any American needs an AR-15 military-style assault rifle that can kill 100 people in a minute. It's like a Wild West situation in parts of Chicago. See, my argument is not about the Americans' right to defend themselves in their home with a firearm. That's not the argument that I'm trying to put out there. My argument is the same as the argument that Senator Feinstein said, that the President endorses, that I believe many Americans now believe following this tragedy, which is that there is absolutely no use and no justification for these AR-15 type assault weapons.
On the contrary.
As a woman who also has self-defense, uses guns for self-defense and likes to know that I have that security, they're a lot easier to fire than other rifles.
So
simply because of the
you think
recoil.
women should all be armed with AR-15s?
My goodness. Now, are you going to go off on a tangent every single time I say one thing?
Would you genuinely believe that if everybody had been armed in the shopping mall, this would have prevented this shooter from killing anybody? And would you encourage people who go to shopping malls in America tomorrow to go armed?
Piers, first of all, you start out with the statement, would I encourage everyone to be armed? I never encourage everyone to be armed. What I think it is a
Who do you
freedom of
encourage
choice
to
issue.
be armed?
You should have the right to be armed.
When people carry a concealed firearm, one doesn't exactly know for sure. And the element of surprise remains with the person carrying concealed, which means that somebody contemplating doing something horrible doesn't know which person or persons might be able to arrest him, to stop him. And that's why our jurisdictions that have easy access to concealed carry firearms enjoy lower murder rates than, say, the gun control mecca of Chicago, which does better than one murder a day.
Well, let me end just by asking one more question.
Today, instead of having those 4 children, I would have liked to have the mother from Georgia.
The pair of you would like to have the right to have a tank, and you don't agree with a single
Now you're committing straw man,
of President Obama's proposals to gun control.
And
you know something? It makes me sick when I hear people say that kind of thing.
Piers, when did I say that, Piers? It makes me sick when I hear people.
Sweeping proposal.
All the things you're saying about there would be the Wild West, that's what they said back in the 90s when Texas passed this law. There'll be road rage. There'll be barroom fights. There'll be, neighbors shooting each other over a noisy dog. None of that, Piers, has ever happened. It hasn't happened. My heart breaks for what has happened in America, whether a college or an elementary or a high school campus. It could happen anywhere. But in Texas, we believe that we have a right to defend our life, our property, and the lives of a third party if we could help them.
Okay, got to leave it there. But
Isn't your real view that you would ban pistols if you could?
No, it wouldn't. What I would do?
Wouldn't you ban pistols if you could?
Let me explain what I would do. I would agree with Dianne Feinstein. It is the high-powered guns of any variety which can fire 30 or 40 or more rounds in less than a minute that can cause mass murder that would be my primary concern right now. And the AR-15...